Hello everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Low Code Café, episode 40. It's been such a long run, 40 editions, and since it's the 40th edition, today we have the lucky number 13, which is the Plant and App release. And Reza, both Reza and Dale will be talking a lot about what's coming in 1.13 today. We'll demo some features, so it will be very focused on this and very hands-on. Before that, for those of you that are new in this webinar, this is something that we do every week. We started it last year around June, and every week we bring together our community, we bring together our team to exchange ideas, but also spend time building software with Plant and App, building system with Plant and App. Every webinar is recorded, and then this is something that we publish on our YouTube channel, and we'll post the link in the chat window. And I was just discussing this earlier with my team and with Dale, that these videos are becoming more and more helpful because they also start helping people on the support channel. So as you navigate in each video, you'll also see that each has a very good chapter structure, so it's easy to navigate, taking into account that it's a 1 hour of video. Cool. And every week we have about the same agenda. I will give you some community updates, and after that we'll have our head of product, Reza, and our head of support, Dale, give us some hands-on demonstration of new capabilities in 1.13. So then, in terms of the community updates, is something that I wanted to bring to your attention. We are about to launch a low-code academy. So that is online courses that you can take, anyone can take, to train on low-code in general and Plant and App in particular. We are just about to release this, and we'll sync this with another big thing that we are preparing, which is the freemium model, the free plan. But in the meantime, until we manage to release this, I wanted to also bring it up to ask for help. So if anyone is interested to give us some early feedback on these low-code courses, please reach out. We really appreciate your help. Cool. So this was the intro from me. I now want to invite Reza Garrow, our head of product, to give us an overview of what's hot in 1.13.
Thanks, Bogdan. So hey everyone, yeah, I wanted to take today and just kind of walk you through. There's a lot that's gone on in 1.13. Let me get my share up here. And so there's a ton that went in, over 70 items. This one's a pretty important release, and it's one that it's an all or nothing. Some of the core underlying code and shared libraries and things have been updated across the board to set the stage for things, and just to do some cleanup of things that were a little bit old and outdated and not used as much anymore and didn't need to be in the platform. So just kind of shrinking things down and being clean and efficient. So you will want to take everything up to 13. Some highlights, and I'll gonna demo a few of these, and Dale's gonna show you some of the smaller goodies that you don't wanna maybe not notice or let slip by, but there's some additional good stuff in there, a lot of enhancements and things. And so a big focus of 13 was security. We've got the low-code engineer role that's fully baked in, and that really sets the stage for the academy and the free plan. And I'm going to be demoing as a user with that role and talk about what it means and how really when you're building, you don't need to go in as a full administrator or host access anymore, and kind of trying to really lessen that need to get into the persona bar for things and starting to feel like you're kind of having everything you need for your day-to-day app building experience. And there's a lot of things that get maybe hidden or masked from you when you're in as one of those overly privileged users. And then when someone else who's not one of these administrator type users goes in, you start revealing things that you missed. So when you're building with like low code engineer or citizen developer, or testing with one of the built-in rules that your users would have, you're going to have a more real world experience. Major update from a security standpoint to AngularJS library. This is very heavily utilized in forms and listings, action grid, action form. You're going to want to take this update. Really, it's just brought up the libraries to more current versions that have some vulnerabilities and things addressed in them. When you do that, you'll want to make sure you take both of them at the same time, as that dependency is shared between them. And in taking up this newer library, there was some refactoring of code that needed to happen and a lot of testing that went in. So go ahead and take it. It's good, it's stable. If you do notice anything that's maybe awry, please let us know right away and we'll address, but we've given it a pretty good workout and think we've shaken out any of the kind of issues that were introduced by going up to the higher library. A new feature I want to show today is this SQL Console and App Builder. You can explore the data in the database. Having the KPI tiles and dashboards now front and center, all the security and role management is being honored within that. And so it's kind of ready for front and center stage. And I'll just show real quickly how to turn that on and touch on a couple of the need to knows about how it works. There's this new log event action that will help a lot in workflows and other areas, whether it be for audit purposes or your own troubleshooting and debugging. In this release, everything has been built and primarily tested against DNN 990, so calling that certified as of this release. And in 1.14, we've already started against 991, which was just released yesterday. And so a lot of additional stability, security, bug fixes, little enhancements and things that Dale will be kind of touching on some of the fewer ones. So before I get into the demo and the walkthrough, I want to turn it over to Dale and let him give you a special from the trenches today.
Wonderful. Let's see if I can figure out which screen needs to be shared here. Okay. So yes, hello. From the trenches. Picked a few things to talk about today, and I'm just going to reiterate what Reza said a moment ago about Plant and App version 1.13, and that corresponds to our Sharp Tools 5.13 release. Of course, in Plant and App, and I'll always plug this, Plant and App is a one-click update, so you decide to take it, one click, and everything's updated, and you're good to go without any issues. In the DNN Sharp, you typically have the choice of what modules to install, and we are advising all or none. If you want to go to 5.13 on any module, do all of your modules. This is particularly talking about the core action grid, action form, my tokens. But if there's a 5.13 version released, you need to take it, or it will be a breaking change. We've worked through scenarios where we've done the upgrade. It's not that you're going to get some form of a catastrophic error, but if you install, for example, just action form version 5.13, you might have problems with grid until you upgrade it. So do them all. And if you want to reach out, if you want to hear about best practices, upgrade backups. If you're particularly far back, if you're not current on the product updates, then perhaps we can help you with a path to get current. But particularly for 5.13, take all or none. So now I'm just going to address a few of the features that are included. There's been some issues with the date and time picker. And in this release, this is a relatively, this is just a kind of a one-off resolution to some issues with date and time. And I think Reza will tell you that in our next release, we're going to take it up kind of in a holistic way. But we were having some issues where people were trying to initialize a date and time picker with a value coming out of a database, And if you look in the comment internal documentation, as you use the initialization, one of the options is to initialize a date and time type time picker with ISO as UTC. And this was something that wasn't working correctly in previous version, and it is now. I'm not going to demonstrate that, but I'll just advise you you can use this ISO as UTC. And again, we hope to see some more holistic look at issues with date time picker and making it where it suits the various use cases of all of our clients. I'm going to demo some today on API endpoint download file. This is some changes in that it has been enhanced to be able to provide a new file name and force download. I'm also going to talk about Serialize to CSV, but let's look first at API endpoint and download file. I've built an API called a test document is my endpoint name. And this is just really to just demonstrate this new feature. So I have, this is a get API method, and I've just had one input parameter, whether or not we want to do a preview. So this is expecting a yes or no answer. And then we download a file based on, use the download file, add response, output download file. I've added it here 2 different ways and made it conditional. So if the preview is yes, we do it one way, and if the preview is not yes, we do it another way. But the areas of change here is that we have this new optional new file name. And so instead of downloading a file and revealing the name as you keep it internally, you can, at the point where it downloads, you can say, I want a different name. So in this case, we're going to output a PDF, the temp, that's in the temp folder, and we're going to rename it Texas 42 with a date time. You can use a token or constants as you name these. In this version, I'm not going to force the download. So this is going to enable a preview of the file in the browser. This optional version, if the preview is not equal to yes, it's the exact same setup, but we're going to force the download. So this gives you some control over what your users are going to experience. So if I jump into save and test on this and look at my sample code, I am going to copy this link and execute it here now. And I'm going to say preview equal yes. So we'll do it this way first. And so what we see is that using that link, the file is previewed within the browser. If we were to save it, for example, using the download button, as it tries to name it, it's going to name it with the file name that the new optional file name, not the internal PDF name. So that is the scenario where we say preview yes. If we say preview no, it's going to use that other branch. And notice it doesn't stop, it just pops a file down. So if you want to provide a download directly, and we can open this, you can click it and open it, and opens in the regular way that your browser is set up to go. But again, the only difference between those two is whether or not this forced download is checked. So you get to control your user experience in a couple of ways, a different file name and whether or not it downloads or previews. The next feature that I wanted to mention is Serialize to CSV. You now have a choice. Previously, this would just output to a file and you had to specify a file. If we now have an option memory, and so if we take a look at that, I have a separate API set up for that. And I see we have a question. If you have questions, please pop them onto the question or the chat, and then we'll take them up. So if we look at this one that I prepared for Serialize to CSV, I did a little setup for this. We're going to be dealing with Serialize to CSV. So I did a a SQL select to get an entity to work with, and the entity that I created is called users entity. But then here's the focus of what's changed. We have users entity where we're serializing this to CSV. So the user is going to be able to download to work with this CSV data. And it has the same setup, but the new change comes in storage location, file, or memory. And so the previous default would have been file, and it prompts all these fields for how you're going to get how the file is going to be created. But if you choose the memory option, you can output it to a token. And then in my case, I'm just going to use that as a raw response. So if we save and test this and execute it, it just outputs the data directly, and it hasn't created a file, so it's just a true response that can be consumed by another external process. Okay, so that is the two, and let me see if we had a question asking about why not make the forced download a conditional statement. Yeah, so in my case, I was just demonstrating that you could do it either way. And so I had, I made two paths and conditionalized them. I see the point that if you wanted to provide that as a user option, you'd have to do it both ways. So we could consider that as a choice, being able to tokenize that instead of making it a selection, but the original implementation was to just make it a checkbox selection. So we'll bring that up. See if we can get the ear of the product manager on that one. And speaking of the product manager, I am going to call Reza back in to highlight the enhancements, the new features of version 1.13. And now Reza's got to try and find the button again. He's hiding. There you go.
Okay, so yeah, and actually that's one of the things I want to leave us a little bit of time for today, is to make sure that we can get some feedback and input, especially as we are taking up 1.14. And before I jump in here on 13 and demoing some of these features, I did want to touch on that you know, we've been, as Bogdan mentioned, really focused in Q1 on getting this free plan and Low Code Academy launched, and those two things go hand in hand together. And so there's been a lot of this work I'm going to show today is to help support that, and it benefits everyone. And in doing that, realize that there's some issues and some stability in areas that has you know, maybe crept in, some issues that have popped up, particularly around date time, and that needing to be easier to use. Some of it is just as bugs, and some of it is just confusion on how things work. It is much more powerful now with being very dialed in on different types of dates and times, UTC, time zone awareness, different stuff, but it's just not as simple as plunking in like a token that says, just put a date here. And so some of what we want to do is take a step back and think about how our, you know, in this stack of tickets that we've had come in over the last couple months, what are people really trying to do here? What's tripping them up? And then let's make that easier just out of the box to do. So we'll be taking that up in 14. And again, have left and carved out a good chunk of our bandwidth in 14 to particularly address these type of issues and ideas and things that you guys are clamoring for. So please give the feedback, very open to it. A few Low Code Academy or cafes ago, I had shown like a idea submission into the community portal, and we'll be looking to turn that on here shortly, and can start rounding those up. But in the meantime, this is a great forum. Reach out, email me, put it on the community portal for now, and once we turn that right area on, they can all go there. But I don't want that to hold up getting the feedback, because that you're the ones using this every day, and it's kind of becomes your lifeblood. So there's things you encounter or think of that we don't. So please keep it coming, and just know that there is a good chunk of 14 for that. So with that said, wanted to touch on a few things that are going on here in 13 that I think are really material and helpful. First one is going to be, I'll touch on roles and security a little bit. And there's two new roles that really have emerged, especially in 13. Low-code engineer got introduced in 12 and has really gotten dialed in 13. So low-code engineer, just because that one's been a little while, this is really meant to be ideally who you need to sign in as when you're building an application. Everything you need to be able to build should be accessible to you as low-code engineer. So App Builder has things like the logs and the ability to update, ability to manage pages now, not just creating data model generated pages. And so realize that there was a feature missing there, and that's the ability to get at the actual database itself, the data structure, as well as what data is in there. And some of the stuff is like, how is this date and time stored? What does it look like in my table? Because a lot of times when you're looking at it on a page, it's already been manipulated by the listing, by the form. And so you're not kind of getting the whole story. So low-code engineer has gone deeper into permissions and modules and the ability to access and do things. And before I move into the SQL console and we explore that, I did want to touch real quick here on this all users role. And so this really, a lot of times, I think if you look at the roles that were built in before, there was an assumption that everyone is going to be a signed in user of the system. And we're going to expose things to signed in users only. But a lot of times there's things, let's say you've got a community portal, right? And you want people to be able to view and read and see things without being signed in. But then if they want to interact, comment, give a thumbs up, a like, or whatever, subscribe to it, then they need to be signed in. And so in the past, you would have to work around this by either injecting a user, that's an action, or switching out of the built-in and very handy entity CRUD actions, we'll call them, the create, read, update, deletes, that make it so you don't have to write SQL. The SQL is being generated for you, and all you kind of do is target the data set you're after, and you can use it very quickly. But if you were trying to give particularly read access a little more broadly, you were forced to do things like change over to SQL or load a user. And so with this built-in all users kind of special role, it's a pseudo role that the platform recognizes, and that's why you'll notice the role ID is -1. When someone's not signed in, that's the role they have. And we'll take a look at how to assign and how to work with this role in a second, but I wanted to show the SQL console first. And so in order to get access to it, it'll be there in 1.13 for everyone, but it starts out disabled. It is very powerful and allows the querying and exposing of the tables and the data in the database. And so you want to make sure that if you want to use this, you turn it on first. Now, the good thing is that only the admin role or above, the administrator's host, can actually enable or disable this. So we've kind of got a separation of duties that we've introduced, and that's a big part of the role work that we've been doing, saying that, hey, if you're an admin, you're administering the system. You're the one that can apply updates. You're the one that creates, developer users and things like that. And as well as being able to turn on features like this SQL console. Now, using these features is not something that an admin necessarily will be doing, right? And that's something that a developer, though, will be doing. And so when this is turned on, citizen developer, low-code engineer, or above are the only ones. And when I say above, I always mean the kind of reserved built-in administrator and super user host roles. Which I don't recommend your general day-to-day use being under, or if you've got people you're working with on a team, not needing to give them that level of access. And so this low-code engineer and citizen developer is primarily the developer roles in the system, and that's who'll be able to actually use the SQL console. So in this case, you'll just enable it, you hit save, things refresh, and you'll get a little alert message that says it's good, and you'll notice a new menu entry here. And this is the SQL console. I'll zoom in a little bit. It's actually got a lot of features going on, but it's very simple to use, and it's taking the place of something that only the most privileged of users could use before out of the persona bar, and that is this SQL console. And so don't need this anymore. I think actually this is a more rich capability than trying to run out of that little sidebar there. So first thing you'll see is that you have a list of available entities. And so anything that you've created with Entity Builder will be listed here, and as well as these kind of built-in entities, files, roles, and users, right? So you have those available in Entity Builder to link to and things like that, even though those are core system tables that you don't directly work with, but you work with as you're building your application. And so beyond just listing the entities, you can, so I've made one here called ticket. And what you can see, it's just an example of like a ticketing help desk type table or entity, right? And you can actually see what are the fields that are in there, and you can see their data types. Do they allow nulls? And field length, stuff like this. So, this created by, it's an integer, it is allowed to go 10 spaces big, and it is nullable. And so when you, so that I think is very helpful. And particularly, you will see this table here, ticket document attachments. And so in my ticket table, you don't see it, but in the Entity Builder, and I'll hop over there real quick. This is whenever you do a list of entities, if you've ever wondered what's happening and the magic that goes on behind that. So I've got like an attachments that go with my tickets, and I've said it's a list of documents, right? How does it know which documents to link up to? When it creates the page for you and has that tab where you've got the attachments or the list of whatever, and you can manage those there is actually a kind of a connector table, a reference table, that is the glue that binds that. And so a lot of times, even when you are writing your own SQL, if you don't know about this table or the name of this table, you don't have everything that's needed to complete that puzzle. And so whenever you click on any one of these, you'll notice that it lets you know it copied into the clipboard, so that you can very easily paste it in and reference it in your query writing. And so this is me selecting from that tickets table. I've got 2 tickets in, but you'll notice that there's no mention of attachments. And so if I come here and click on this one now, that's in my clipboard, and I can paste that. And you'll see that really what goes into these, when you do a list of entities, what's going into that is the 2 entities that are involved. In this case, a ticket is being associated with a document. So I'm just holding the ticket ID and the document ID. That's what's in that table. You could now write a query if you wanted on your own that would let you join over to the files table, but you would use this ticket document attachments. And you also get a feel when you see them listed here on what its naming convention is. And so it is kind of taking the primary entity name, it's taking the reference entity name, and whatever the field name was. And it creates a table then that holds just the key values that are the IDs that are making that connection. So now you can write queries here. You can create views. You can delete records. You can drop whole tables. So you want to be careful here, as this is a pretty powerful thing, and you can see why it's restricted to these developer roles only. Another neat thing that happens is whenever you do, and anyone does run a query in here, a action is logged that lets you know who executed it and what did they execute. So you've got the audit of anyone who's querying the table or accessing the database, and that's put into your admin logs automatically. Something else that's very handy here, there are queries a lot of times that you end up writing, and I'm going to do maybe a simple one here. But sometimes you need to know, and as you're working with different tokens and things like that, and you'll notice like under the users tab, you don't see the user ID. But a lot of times you want to target a certain user by ID, or roles by ID, or pages by ID, things like that. You need these and you don't know what they are. And so you might find yourself running this query quite often. And what you can do then is just save it. And when you click save, it's a new query, or you can update an existing. It's smart enough to switch between the two. And so here I can just say all users. And let's say that really quickly, I do all tickets, and I want to save that as well. See, and I don't want to update and override all users. So I'm going to say this is all tickets. And so that's what's run now, but I can come here at any time. These are saved in here, and I have them handy. So you might get into some more complex ones with joins, and you know, this will support filters and, you know, criteria and things like that. Anything that your standard SQL console or command center would support. So maybe I just say I want everyone other than the super user. That's limited that down. If I say save, it's going to update the existing. And if I switch back over here to tickets, run that, and then go back to users, you'll see that that was saved and preserved for me. You delete with the trash can. Also, let's say that you've written a query in SQL Server Management Studio or your development environment of choice, right? Because you get a lot more power there sometimes. You can take that as a text file only for security reasons, and you paste that SQL or set of SQL into a text file, and then you can upload it here, and it will load it right in. So just kind of a little extra handy thing there for you. And the last kind of feature that this has then is the ability to take the results of your query and download it either as Excel, CSV, or JSON format. And I think the JSON one is kind of extra powerful and special. And so it will name it out, and you'll see that hopefully my stuff is shared here still. I don't know if I shared my whole screen or only this window, but let's take a look. Open this up with text editor. And so not sure if you all can see this due to my screen sharing, but you'll see that you get a really nice clean JSON format. So this comes in also very handy for moving data between systems, or let's say you've got other workflows and actions where you want to loop over JSON and things like that. You can turn pretty much any query result into JSON. So that's the SQL console in a nutshell. One other little thing I wanted to touch on, if we go to our page manager, which came out in 1.12, this particular page is located under configuration. And that's really where App Builder and some of the additional pages live, right? And that's always kind of been there for you. I don't know if people know that's there. You want to be very, very careful messing with anything in here. That's the first thing I wanted to mention and kind of cautionary tale. However, you can navigate to any page on your site. And what I would say is if you're looking to just have this available, open it up as its own page. It's there for you. And you can kind of take a look and explore it, how it works. Now, if you wanted to take this thing to the next level, one, we love ideas or love for you to share some extension. Do make a clone or copy of it. If anything you go and if you were to modify one of these kind of core system pages and features, on your next update, all your changes will get overwritten. We're always going to push what App Builder says is the truth over the top of any changes you've made. And so just kind of keep that in mind, but you can clone this entire page. And if you had some other things you wanted to do with this, capabilities you wanted to put in, and have it kind of be your own, just make a copy of it. All that's really happening here is really 3 forms. And the primary one, everything is run out of the SQL console. And so if you did want to, this is also, and the reason I say peek at this, it's a really, this was built by Radu very quickly, actually, and he did a really nice job with this. And I think it's a very advanced implementation of something that can be done relatively simply if you kind of know what you're doing with Plant an App and App Builder. And so, you know, if you just wanted to see how this is wired up under the hood and some of the techniques, there's some cool JavaScript. How is he exporting and getting these files out of here? How is he running a query on the fly and still being secure and protecting from SQL injection and things like that? You can take a look at how this guy's wired up. Otherwise, just use it as is. It's super handy.
Very, very nice. I didn't realize it was built that way. Kind of helps answer the question that came up from Jim asking about the SQL console and whether you'd be able to query tables that are outside your DNN database. And if I understand it correctly, it could easily be enhanced to do that, since that's going to be part of the SQL query action, but we might consider taking that up in another release.
Yeah, there's what I would recommend as the way to do that is to, you can pass a connection string or specify. It is a run SQL action that's happening at the end of the day. And so with a minor modification, maybe a dropdown that has your connection strings from your web config. So rather than showing these and exposing passwords and usernames, you wouldn't want to do that. You can always reference from your config manager. There is a connection string in here, and it has a name. A name, right? And so you can put that name in there as well, and that works just as good as putting the full connection string in. So with a minor enhancement, a token, a checkbox, or something, you can pass or use that in as the connection string. So something we would consider. I think the reason it doesn't ship with that is we don't know what other connection strings you're going to have. And again, this was version 1, right? Let's get value in everyone's hands. But this is definitely an extension that you could do yourself. And if there's people see a lot of value in that or starting to do things like that, we can definitely look at taking that up into this in a future enhancement of it.
Very good. Thanks for asking, Jim.
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to show here is something, and I will, Dale, can you see my screen? Has my screen switched? And are you seeing a user design?
Issue with daytime. Yep.
Okay, great. I didn't know if I was sharing my whole screen or just that one window. So this might be something that you all come across from time to time or quite often. And that's the next big thing. And I feel like this is probably the most impactful, important feature that's been released in 1.13. It's going to make everyone's lives a lot better while still allowing you to actually have better security in your system. You might be wondering, well, how is exposing data to unauthenticated users going to make me more secure? Well, it's because you don't have to jump and do some of those workarounds that were very all or nothing. And I'll show how this works. So I showed you that there's that all user role. Let's take a look at, for example, my ticketing entity here. And this one, as I showed, is very basic, just a name, and it's got a couple of other entities, one for priority, one for status, and then this list of documents. And I used this on purpose because the difference of documents, it's one of the built-in entities, which you don't have any control over. You can't access because it's so fundamental and part of the overall platform. You get to reference and use it in relation to your app, but you don't have control of it. You wouldn't want, because you'd have a high likelihood of potentially corrupting the whole platform. It kind of needs to be the way it is. So first thing though is that the security and roles with your own entities, you do have a lot of control over that. And what you had in the past was just this regular user's role. In the case of a ticket, I would want, you can see out of the box, these grayed out ones are the kind of privileged built-in users, right? Your developers, as well as like your managers, who can see, they're kind of the admin of the actual rendered application. They can see all the data, they can see all the pages, they can use the entire application to its full capabilities. They're not restricted. Now, you can always create your own roles and different types of more privileged users and granular type things, and give a user one or more of these roles, right? So you don't have to just give someone all or nothing. Like we talked about earlier with that SQL console, well, admins are the ones that enable it, but citizen developer and low code engineers are the ones that use it. Well, what if someone, you're a small shop, or you do have a very privileged user that can do both? Just give them both roles. Stack the roles, but don't overprivilege your user, right? And so similar type of thing here. I only want regular kind of users of this help desk system to be able to see their own. They can edit their own, but they can't delete anything. But what happens when I wanted to let someone see everything, right? For example, if we go back and say like these statuses that are on the tickets, right? Now, that's one of these errors that would have popped up here, right? If I've referenced a status entity because I want to know the ticket status or priority, in the past, I would have had to give users here, I would have said they can see everything. But what happens then is that starts exposing the whole page to them and the menu system and all this kind of stuff. And so by using this all users role, you'll see that it only has two modes. They can see everything, basically just giving them read, or they can see nothing. Once you say all entries, not only does this give access to being able to read this entity, but it goes a little deeper, and things like your dashboards, anywhere that the listings, the grids, anything that's using the built-in capability to query this table, this entity, is going to honor this setting. And so now you can see I don't have to give regular users, they don't maintain and control these list of statuses. They just need to see a status when it's linked or used as part of a ticket that they have access to. And so this is where all you have to do by default, this is always off. All you would do is say all, save and override, and that will propagate out throughout the system. And then what that gives you is the ability to use the read action anywhere you want in a workflow or whatever. And it already was honoring these permissions. It honors this one now. So no more workarounds and things like that needed, as well as now being able to expose things. And so, for example, I've got, another entity. Let me run to my front end here. And I was just separating ideas from tickets. Tickets should only be maybe for signed in people, but ideas, anyone can maybe see, right? And then if they wanted to vote on them or comment on them or something like that, they need to be signed in. But I just wanted to show maybe a list of features or any, you're just building a public facing site, right? And you have maybe events that are upcoming or catalogs of courses that people can take, trips, whatever it is, a travel agency site, a shopping cart, right? People don't have to be signed in to browse. And so you can get the power of storing the stuff in the database and outputting it however you like without having to do funny workarounds now just by using this all user. There is one exception to that. And as I mentioned, in configuration, if we go back to our, regular standard entities, you'll see that things like document, you don't have any access. So you can't go and apply that all user permission there. What we've done to address that, and that's actually what is failing me here. And so we'll take a look at this page really quickly. So we go to tickets and we'll look at this one, for example. Now I am overly privileged at the moment, right? And so that's again, one of the reasons that you want to be mindful when you're building. You're going to be hiding things. You can see, oh, I'm Reza. So I added something to what comes out of the box that goes and uses so this is the view form, is always the details. And I simply added something that is going and getting the current user's display name, okay? And the way I went and got that though, probably could have picked a better example, but the way I got that was a read of user, right? Because user is one of these protected entities. And what you'll see is on these protected entities, not the ones that you're defining, status does not have this, but the built-in protected ones do. And what it has is an override built-in security. By default, this is always false, but now in your workflows, in your forms, in your pages, anywhere that you're doing this read of one of the kind of built-in and special entities, you can set things to, you can just set it to true, and I'll go ahead and do that. And if I go refresh this page now, you'll see that I was a standard user, right? And standard in the past, the only people that could read from those special entities were those very highly privileged users. So the only thing you could do is write your own query or inject a overly privileged user into the context of the flow, right? And then have to deal with that. You've kind of lost who you were. It was messy and a security vulnerability, to be quite honest, compared to now saying in this one case, not a big deal. It's okay to see who you are. It's okay to see some attachments about maybe t-shirt sizes or something that you know, people can have, and those are attachments or pictures or images or files, right? And I'm okay in this case, in this context, of letting anyone see that. And so you can override that. But, and it was kind of in the spirit of what I think Jim called out a minute ago about when Dale was showing the forced download, and he said, hey, could that have been conditional? Well, did think of that on this one. So rather than have you have to only say, show it to everyone or not, basically you can switch to expression mode. And this supports tokens, right? And so I could do things like saying has role, you know, users, or whatever, right? So you can conditionally, you can get more granular on when and who and how you want to let these reads, which ultimately result in you exposing this data or using the data for something downstream. So think in a workflow. Sometimes you're executing moving tickets across statuses and things like that. And in the context of that workflow, you might say, it's okay. I don't want to run this workflow, not as the person who submitted the ticket or something like that, just because I want to go and add attachments or something. You can override and you can use this expression method, or you can just say, hey, because I'm isolated in this workflow and the only this access to this workflow is protected already, I'm okay with just saying, yeah, turn this on, override, it's fine, because the only things I'm going to be doing is fetching some data to use in the next steps that are protected. However, so you know, most of the time, a lot of the times, this true is going to be fine for you. But the idea here is true is all or nothing. Anyone who has access, in this case, to this page would be able to see this. So if I had turned this page on, right now I am a signed in user, right? But let's say this page was exposed to non-signed in users. Well, they don't have a username, a display name. So reading user for them isn't going to make sense, right? And it's not going to work right. And that might be a case where I switch to expression mode and I do this here, right?
Yep.
So that's basically how that works. Dale?
Yeah, I was just going to get you to look at the clock. I know you had one more feature enhancement that you wanted to
yes, thank you. And it's a quickie. And so what I wanted to show, you saw on this ideas board here that I've got a dashboard, okay? And one thing to keep in mind on these ideas is that notice how when I'm logged in as a developer, I have additional tiles that I could configure, right? But when I'm a regular user, I don't see those. If it's not configured, you won't see it. If the person that's in, the roles that they have are not granted access to the entity that is chosen, the tile will also not render. Okay, so this is honoring the roles that we just looked at there. So if you gave all users, and let's say you just wanted some dashboard or something out that's showing some stats and things like that to anyone, even someone not signed in, giving the entity that all users view ability then will make this dashboard render that. And so the last feature I want to show is, speaking of dashboards, let's say I wanted a dashboard on my ticket listing. So in the past, you would have had to go and put the page into edit mode and add it module by hand and drag it into a spot and all of this stuff. All you need to do now is just include dashboard. You can do this when you're first setting it up or after the fact. Do your override. Now I go to tickets. Now I don't see anything here yet, and that's basically because of what I just showed you. Nothing's been configured yet, right? So I could very quickly do a total, pick entity. One way, by the way, around the built-in security is you could do use database table and pick the table out of there directly if you needed to not have the security restriction on for some reason. Just know that the built-in security is applied when you're in entity mode. And so we'll just get account, all time, integer, save. And now you'll see the tile will show up. If I decide for some reason that I don't want this on, I simply turn this off, save, override. Looks like it's gone. However, it's still here, right? So what we do is we don't remove it, we don't delete it, you don't lose anything. only the developers can still see it all together. So two things kind of control visibility. One is the tile configured? Three things I would say. Do you have permission to view the data source the tile is pulling from? And the third is it enabled or disabled overall, right? And so this is an enable disable type thing. Now, if you have never turned this on, it will not put it on the page. We don't bloat in places where you don't need it. In the list of statuses, for example, like a lookup, I don't need a dashboard here, right? So why pay the price for loading that on this page every time and just have these things running wild? So the idea is you'll turn them on when you need them. You want to pull them back for whatever reason, but not have it be deleted, just disable it. And that was the main things I wanted to show today. And we still got, 8 minutes here. And so just looking for any kind of questions, feedback, if you guys want to talk about 14 and questions about or recommendations for any sort of kind of stability type things, fixes, enhancements that you'd be looking for there. Happy to do that. Otherwise, once 13 is shipped and 14 is underway, I was planning on doing a good walkthrough. As you can see, there's a lot here in 14. Some of it's security related. A couple of the enhancements that new features we were working on in 13 didn't quite make the cut in time. And so I wanted to make sure those were solid and stable before we release them. So particularly this grouping one, it's going to come out full, and it will apply to entities, tokens, and workflows. And whatever namespace you defined is shared across those three, usable in those three. And I just would, rather than put it into place piecemeal and workflows only, and people are creating these namespaces and groups and stuff like that, and then coming back through and having to rework that, I just thought it'd be better for everyone to have it come out as a fully complete feature. And so that's in 14. But again, like I said, a lot of focus of 14 is not so much on new things as much as making sure that you've got really good, stable access to date time. It's clearer and easier to understand, as well as some of these kind of issues and things that we've been seeing come through on the support center.
We did get a question there.
Wonderful.
Question and answers.
Can you read it? I never.
Sure. What are the workflow logging changes that made it into 1.13?
And so basically what you have access to in 13 is that log, the action to log event. If the real question there is, did we get we want to add a couple of tokens into workflows so you can actually know the workflow ID and name that's being executed, so that when you are logging and you do this log event action, you can add like, I was this workflow that logged this event, so that when you have complexity around multiple workflows that are calling other workflows and executing and following different paths and things like that, and you just see like maybe something logged or an error and you don't know where did this come from so easily, you'll be able to do that. The overall logging of workflow, and that is something, if we look here, is in 14. It did not make 13. But you'll be able to kind of have a debug mode that you can turn on, similar to how forms and listings and things have, where you can get a real nice audit trail that will be accessible here in your logs. And so in system logs, you see how dashboard, different things are all logging here, but workflows doesn't. So workflows will be able to start logging everything that it's doing, the steps that it took and actions that it ran and what values it had when it ran them, that sort of stuff. That will come.
So that's in 1.14. The name of the workflow is in 1.13, or it's coming in 1.14? And
the ID, both of those will be in 14. The only real logging capability that made it into 13 is to be able to use that log event action in workflows. And so you can log all kinds of things. Where was I? What values did I have when I was going to run this action here? Maybe it's not working right or failing, or you want to just audit, hey, I took path A instead of path B, and write that in, especially when you have splits or a lot of complex logic in your workflows. You can use that log event for now. In 14, you'll be able to use those two new tokens, workflow :ID, workflow :name, and their tokens basically. that can be outputs of the workflow itself, or can be passed into things like the log event action, which will then give you some greater granularity in your logging, your error handling, that sort of thing.
Very good. Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions? Feedback as you're taking this release up and you start working with these new features? Someone sent me a really nice list of feedback and things that they've been working on a new build. And so that's all very well received.
Two more questions have popped in. One is about Bootstrap 4, and the other is whether or not we're ever going to support multiple portals, what the plan for multiple portals are.
Yep. So Bootstrap 4 is in the works. We tried to do it, and it wasn't so simple, especially to preserve backwards compatibility for things people have built. I believe it is sitting in 1.15 currently. I know there's demand there for that, and we can look at that. Really, always there's a lot going on, and trying to kind of satisfy a whole lot of needs and find that balance between it works, it's got great features, it's secure, and things like that. But always trying to have like a big kind of overriding theme or priority each quarter. And so, like I said, the Academy and stuff was, and the free plan for this quarter. In Q2, really moving into having this multi-environment as well as app export import. And I think that as we go to do that work, I don't know if that really lends itself to the Bootstrap 4.1 as much. We are also planning a refactor and rewrite of action form that will probably allow for that. Happy to have the Bootstrap 4.1. I don't see it happening in the next couple of months at least, because the focus is going to be on this multi-environment, multi-app as far as kind of the next big thing. But as part of that work, you will see the databases detach so that the stuff you're creating with your entities is living in a separate database. This makes it easier to update, have multiple environments, as well as then I know a very sought after and needed feature is pointing to and connecting to and importing into the entity builder existing SQL tables that are living out somewhere else. So, hey, I've got this table here. Why recreate it all by hand and write a wizard to import all the data? I should be able to point to this thing and turn it into an entity. This multi-app, multi-environment work we're doing will accomplish that, as well as the child portals. I've seen plenty of, I think there's enough demand and people out there that need that as they're transitioning to Plantain app. And the big gotcha of why it doesn't happen is that the entity table. If you have child portals, if I have ticket in portal 0 and I have ticket in portal 1, the system can't handle that and doesn't know which one you want and can't enforce that, hey, this already exists. Once we detach those databases, which is one of the first things we're doing right now to move in to hit this milestone, that then will put us in a position now where the system can have awareness of different portals. And so that one I think is coming, and that is on the horizon here right after 14 to take up as we move into detaching the app schema from the DNMDB and things. So this is a prerequisite to being able to support that, and we're taking that work up now and doing some design. I spoke with Bogdan before this session and wanting to pull together our plans around how that's going to work with the data import and the different tables and things. And I think we'll diagram this up and make it presentable, and would love to pull a group together, whether it's, I don't know if this is the right setting for it, but we can get together with some of the people that are interested in this and make sure what we have planned is going to meet your needs before we've gone and started implementing it, right? So just want to make sure we hit the mark with this one. So very, very happy to get feedback and review from you all to make sure what we're thinking is going to align with what you're needing.
Very good. And with that, we've taken our hour.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, everyone, for being here. I think always it's a good moment when we have this release time. You know, it's the end of a big effort, you know, and as you can imagine, you don't see this, but as you can imagine, behind the scene, it's always, oh, let's do this, let's do that. We have deadlines, you know, customers are waiting, you know. So it's like every release is like a nice adventure, you know, especially when we look back to it, not forward.
Cool. And I have the beta release candidate of this blessed and ready if anyone would like to get their hands on it. I feel it's ready. We are we always have our 1 week bake, and that's what's going on now. But everything I've seen it's good and solid. So if anyone is looking, reach out. Otherwise, next Wednesday it should drop fully out to everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Reza. So yes, please reach out. If you want to get involved in the Low-Code Academy, in the new release, your involvement, your help is much appreciated. Cool. Thanks everyone, and we'll be seeing you again next week.